The coalition that came to power promising accountable, clean government is now grappling with a serious misconduct scandal. An anti-corruption report has revealed the police minister's trusted advisor was actively working to bring down then Police Chief Commissioner Simon Overland. The advisor was working with the Parliamentary Secretary for Police, Bill Tilley, who has resigned from that position but remains in Parliament. The whole affair has damaged the police minister's credibility and the government's anti-corruption agenda. State political reporter Francis Bell has this story.
This is an Australian Idol. You don't sack the Chief Commissioner of Police because you've got a body of opinion out there that says that such should be the case.
We have quite clearly given our support to Simon Overland.
Doesn't make me a lame duck commissioner. I'm getting on with the job. I've today tendered my resignation. It's been pretty clear that there's been a lot of distractions over the last little while.
It was a spectacular downfall for a Chief Commissioner, but when Simon Overland fell on his sword over the release of misleading crime statistics, he was already a dead man walking. Months of damaging media coverage had cast a permanent shadow over his ability to stay in the top job, and it's now clear that a key player in his demise was one of the police minister's most trusted advisors.
I said yesterday I regret terribly that all this has happened. Tristan Weston, what he did was absolutely, utterly and flagrantly outside the guidelines that he was required to fulfil and that he knew he was to fulfil.
Peter Ryan handpicked Detective Leading Senior Constable Tristan Weston as his ministerial advisor soon after the Baillieu government came to office. The appointment was against the wishes of Simon Overland, who thought the role should be filled by someone with a higher rank. Mr Weston had unsuccessfully contested the seat of Macedon for the Liberal Party at the state election, and he told OPI investigators he believed he got the job in the minister's office because Peter Ryan wanted someone with a strong bullshit detector. Mr Weston said Simon Overland resented the fact he was there and that the Chief Commissioner refused to have meetings with him. In return, Mr Weston made no secret of his view of Simon Overland, telling a number of MPs and Cabinet Ministers that the Chief Commissioner was going to wreak untold damage on both the government and the police force.
Even Weston's defenders have said, he was a political innocent, so that's in itself a problem in a highly sensitive office. And secondly, it seems that Weston never hid under a bushel the fact that he opposed Simon Overland.
Tristan Weston believes Simon Overland's rival and deputy, Sir Ken Jones, would do a better job as Chief Commissioner, and the pair set about developing what the OPI describes as a totally inappropriate relationship. Sir Ken told Mr Weston he believed Simon Overland was targeting him, and he told others that the Chief Commissioner ignored him when he raised concerns about money being wasted and problems with the sex offenders register, parolees committing crimes and the police database. A consultant appointed by the Premier's office had already tried but failed to repair the relationship between the two top cops, and Sir Ken's decision to resign, flagged as early as June last year, was publicly announced in May this year. But days later, Simon Overland ordered him to clear his desk immediately.
I have come to that view based on my belief that it's in his best interests and the best interests of the organisation.
At the same time, Tristan Weston was trying to persuade Sir Ken to withdraw his resignation, telling him the Police Association Secretary, Greg Davies, had brokered a deal where, if the government accepted the withdrawal of the resignation, the association would take a softer approach on pay negotiations.
There was no deal done in relation to that because there didn't need to be any deal done. If he wanted to withdraw his resignation, on my view of the world, he could have done it by simply saying so.
Deal or no deal, it all came to nothing because the resignation was not withdrawn. But Tristan Weston continued his media leaks against Simon Overland. Some of his tip-offs to journalists were caught on OPI phone taps, as was his description of Ken Lay, now the acting Chief Commissioner, as a sycophantic toad. Mr Weston warned Ken Lay not to get too close to Simon Overland, telling him the Chief Commissioner was in trouble.
The warning that Tristan gave me for a political advisor who was still a serving policeman and a very junior policeman to be coming to me and saying that, basically saying I needed to pick sides, to me was just quite extraordinary, quite extraordinary.
Ken Lay received a similar warning from the Police Association.
Ken, you might need to be careful which mast you nail your colours to.
Isn't
it.
that threatening behaviour on your part?
Threatening? No, I think that's saying I believe this person's in a bit of strife.
My recollection was it was an enormously difficult time. As a member of Police Command, I felt under siege. I thought Simon was under siege. We could not make head nor tail of where these leaks were coming from, which were attributed to government sources.
Throughout his campaign against Simon Overland, Tristan Weston was in daily contact with Bill Tilley, the Parliamentary Secretary for Police, effectively Peter Ryan's junior minister. Bill Tilley also met Sir Ken Jones on several occasions, seeking to reverse his resignation. But for the most part, he kept the police minister in the dark.
It's an extraordinary oversight, and I think it suggests it's someone who didn't understand his responsibilities as a parliamentary secretary and where his loyalties lied in that regard. And I think, again, you may now have to ask questions of how he became a parliamentary secretary if he didn't have an appreciation of his role.
The OPI's investigation yesterday forced Tristan Weston and Bill Tilley to resign from their positions. Mr Weston, who's had his legal bills paid by the taxpayer, has now effectively been cut loose. But Mr Tilley remains on the Liberal backbench. Keeping him within the ranks is crucial for a government with a one-seat majority. There are now serious questions about the judgment of the Police Minister and how two of his closest advisors could be actively undermining the Chief Commissioner for up to 3 months without his knowledge.
Mr Ryan should go. Mr Ryan should do the right thing. If he knows nothing, then he has no place being the Minister for Police in our great state.
Deputy Premier, Minister for Police.
Under the Westminster system, ministers are held accountable for the activities of their staff. But Peter Ryan says he won't resign because Tristan Weston was acting alone and lied when he was confronted about his activities.
If I felt there were anything about this which were deserving of my taking another course, by hell I would. There'd be no one having to be urging me.
Questions also remain about the actions of Sir Ken Jones. He says his contact with Mr Weston has been seriously misconstrued, and the OPI has come under criticism for using its extraordinary powers to follow him and bug his phone. But he remains under investigation by the police watchdog, a significant reversal in circumstances for someone who only months ago was being courted to help set up the government's new Anti-Corruption Commission.
In my role as a minister, I discuss a lot of issues with a lot of people. Implementation is something that I discussed with Ken Jones. It went no further than that.
For now, the government is reeling from its first major crisis less than 12 months after winning office. The Premier says he has absolute faith in his ministers to get on with the job of effective government. Others aren't so sure.
I think this isn't a new problem in this government, that perhaps its talent base is limited. And so those like Ryan are asked to carry extraordinary loads. But it can be a problem, and going forward again, but you might need to think about a reshuffle and bring some of the other members forward.